The Swan River Colony was a British settlement established in 1829 on the Swan River, in Western Australia. The name was a pars pro toto for Western Australia. In 1832, the colony was officially renamed Western Australia when the colony's founding Lieutenant Governor, Captain James Stirling, belatedly received his commission. However, the name Swan River Colony was used informally for many years afterwards. European exploration. The first recorded Europeans to sight land where the city of Perth is now located were Dutch sailors. Most likely the first visitor to the Swan River area was Frederick de Houtman on the 19th of July 1619, travelling on the ship Dordrecht and Amsterdam. His records indicate he first reached the Western Australian coast at latitude 32 degrees 20, which would equate to Rottnest to just south of there. He did not land because of heavy surf, and so proceeded northwards without much investigation. On the 28th of April 1656, the Virgule Drake en route to Batavia was shipwrecked 107 kilometers north of the Swan River near Ledge Point. Of the 193 on board, only 75 made it to shore. A small boat that survived the wreckage then sailed to Batavia for help, but a subsequent search party found none of the survivors. The wreck was rediscovered in 1963. In 1658, 3 Dutch Republic ships, also partially searching for the Virgule Drake, visited the area. The Wack and Bowie under Captain S. Volkitzer won, the Elberg under Captain J. Pierboom and the Emmeloord under Captain A. Jonk sighted Rottnest but did not proceed any closer to the mainland because of the many reefs. They then travelled north and subsequently found the wreck of the Virgule Drake. They gave an unfavorable opinion of the area partly due to the dangerous reefs. The Dutch captain Willem De Vlaminck was the next European in the area, commanding 3 ships, the Geelvink, Naptang and the Weseltje. He arrived at named Rottnest on the 29th of December 1696, and on the 10th of January 1697 discovered and named the Swan River. His ships could not sail up the river because of a sandbar at its mouth, so he sent out a sloop which even then required some dragging over the sandbar. They sailed until reaching mud flats probably near Harrison Island. They saw some aborigines but were not able to meet any close-up. Vlaminck was also not impressed with the area, and this was probably the reason for a lack of Dutch exploration from then on. In 1801, the French ships Geographe captained by Nicolas Bowden and Naturalist captained by Emmanuel Hamlin visited the area from the south. While the Geographe continued northwards, the Naturalist remained for a few weeks. A small expedition dragged longboats over the sandbar and explored the Swan River. They also gave unfavorable descriptions regarding any potential settlement due to many mud flats upstream and the sandbar. Later in March 1803, the Geographe with another ship Caswariana passed by Rottnest on the way eventually back to France, but did not stop longer than a day or two. The next visit to the area was the first Australian-born maritime explorer, Philip Parker King, in 1822 on the Bathurst. King was also the son of former Governor Philip Gidley King of New South Wales. However, King also was not impressed with the area. Background to the settlement. The founding father of modern Western Australia was Captain James Stirling, who, in 1827, explored the Swan River area in HMS Success, which first anchored off Rottnest, and later in Cockburn Sound. He was accompanied by Charles Fraser, the New South Wales botanist. Their initial exploration began on the 8th of March in a cutter and gig, with parties continuing on foot from the 13th of March. In late March, HMS Success moved to Sydney, arriving there on the 15th of April. Stirling arrived back in England in July 1828, promoting in glowing terms the agricultural potential of the area. His lobbying was for the establishment of a free settlement in the Swan River area with himself as its governor. As a result of these reports, and a rumour in London that the French were about to establish a penal colony in the western part of Australia, possibly at Shark Bay, the Colonial Office assented to the proposal in mid-October 1828. In December 1828, a Secretary of State for Colonies dispatched reserved land for Crown, as well as from the clergy, and for education, and specified that water frontage was to be rationed. The most cursory exploration had preceded the British decision to found a settlement at the Swan River. The most makeshift arrangements were to govern its initial establishment and the granting of land, and the most sketchy surveys were to be made before the grants were actually occupied. A set of regulations were worked out for distributing land to settlers on the basis of land grants. Negotiations for a privately run settlement were also started with a consortium of 4 gentlemen headed by Potter McQueen, a Member of Parliament who had already acquired a large tract of land in New South Wales. The consortium withdrew after the Colonial Office refused to give it preference over independent settlers in selecting land, but one member, Thomas Peel, accepted the terms and proceeded alone. Peel was allocated 500,000 acres, conditional on his arrival at the settlement before the 1st of November 1829 with 400 settlers. Peel arrived after this date with only 300 settlers, but was still granted 250,000 acres. The events of the settlement. The first ship to reach the Swan River was Hms Challenger. After anchoring off Garden Island on the 25th of April 1829, its captain Charles Fremantle declared the Swan River Colony for Britain on the 2nd of May 1829. The Parmelia arrived on the 31st of May carrying Stirling and his party, and HMS Sulphur arrived on the 8th of June. 3 merchant ships arrived shortly after, the Callista on the 5th of August, the St. Leonard on the 6th of August, and the Marquess of Anglesey on the 23rd of August. A series of accidents followed the arrivals which probably nearly caused the abandonment of the expedition. The Challenger and Sulphur both struck rocks while entering Cockburn Sound and were fortunate to escape with only minor damage. The Parmelia, however, under Stirling's overconfident pilotage, also ran aground, lost her rudder and damaged her keel, which necessitated extensive repairs. With winter now set in, the settlers were obliged to land on Garden Island. Bad weather and the required repairs meant that Stirling did not manage to reach the mainland until the 18th of June, and the remaining settlers on the Parmelia finally arrived in early August. In early September a major disaster occurred. The Marquess of Anglesey was driven ashore during a gale and wrecked beyond repair. The first reports of the new colony arrived back in England in late January 1830. They described the poor conditions and the land as being totally unfit for agriculture. They went on to say that the settlers were in a state of near starvation and said that the colony had been abandoned. As a result of these reports, many people cancelled the migration plans and diverted to Cape Town and New South Wales. Nevertheless, a few settlers arrived and additional stores were dispatched. By 1832 the settler population of the colony had reached about 1,500, but the difficulty of clearing land to grow crops was so great that by 1850 the population had only increased to 5,886. This population had settled, mainly around the southwestern coastline at Bunbury, Augusta and Albany. Karl Marx used the Swan River Colony to illustrate a point about a shortcoming of capitalism in Das Kapital.